Welcome to Educating Modern Day Heroes. For those of you that don't know, my name is Matt Beaudreau. I'm a career educator. I have played the game at every level possible. Started out at Stanford University. I've worked with education centers all over the world. I've worked with higher education centers all over the world. I've run public schools. I've run private schools. I've left all of those to start schools of my own, and I now help some of the best entrepreneurs on the planet to open schools for themselves. So I understand a little bit about education. I understand the game of education. And I say game very, very intentionally. See, I learned that game early on, and I remember sitting in the parking lot of a school that I was running, and it was one of your typical conveyor belt schools. I hadn't yet figured out how to get myself out of that situation. And I was reading a manifesto called Stop Stealing Dreams by a man who is now one of my mentors. His name's Seth Godin. And I remember reading this manifesto and just sitting in the parking lot. And it was the manifesto that actually changed my life, because I read the entire thing before going home, and I decided that very day that I would not spend any longer in a conveyor belt school system, especially because I had heroes of my own that I was raising. So I was going to build something else, and I credit Seth for really being the guy that tipped me over the edge for that. But he asked a pivotal question in that manifesto. He said, "What should education be for?" That is the question for all of us. See, understand the game of school has to do with the Industrial Revolution. The game of school has to do with building obedient, compliant human beings who are smart enough to follow directions, but not necessarily driven enough to try to do something different, to try to think outside of the box. We try to take the drive out of them and just make them obedient. That's what the game of school is for. Education is about ownership. Education is about mastery. Education is about putting things into action. And in a recent TED Talk I did, I used the example of my son wanting to get into jiu-jitsu. And I said school would just have him study jiu-jitsu players, read books on jiu-jitsu, maybe make a trifold board and do an oral report on all things jiu-jitsu, and then tell him that he understood jiu-jitsu. Whereas the real world honors results. Education would be go do jiu-jitsu, go suck at it, go get beat, and go get better, right? Self-awareness, self-confidence, learning and unlearning. By the way, that's the literacy of the 21st century, the ability to learn what you need when you need it, and the ability to unlearn something that is no longer relevant. Being willing to try, being willing to fail, being resilient, having an ability, having a competence, having responsibility, being sovereign over your own life, being uncaged mentally, physically, spiritually, being free. That's what an education is for. See, freedom isn't complicated, and neither is a world-class education. We're going to do this simply. And if you choose to connect to our growing community afterwards, we're going to do it together. But the goal of all of this is to give you the overview, give you the simplicity to understand that there is a pattern to a world-class education. And that world-class education will unlock sovereignty and freedom, and that sovereignty and freedom will show you exactly what the answer to that question is. What should education be for? I have had the honor and the privilege of doing this with thousands of humans already, and it is an honor and it is a privilege to serve you and yours now. Let's get started.